Hello Steelers, and welcome to this video and review of the Too Fat Lardies Blitzkrieg 1940 Handbook. This has been around since about 2018, released a few years ago as I record this. So it's not brand new, but it is still pretty new, and I know lots of people probably are interested in this when I mentioned it, that I got it in a hobby report video recently. So I thought I'd do a quick review of the book itself, just show you what kind of thing you can expect from it, and also take you through what's actually in there as well. So this is currently retailing on the Too Fat Lardies website for £26 for the hard copy, for those who don't like to read PDFs, but you can get it in PDF form as well for £16. There's also a bundle as well, so you can get both the book and the PDF version as well, which is a little bit more. I'm not entirely sure how much it is, but it means you can read it immediately as soon as you've bought it without having to wait. However, Too Fat Lardies are incredibly quick when it comes to posting stuff, and mine I think only took a couple of days to come through before it was delivered, so you're not waiting too long anyway. So this covers basically the German invasion of the Low Countries and France in 1940, as it gives away in the title. But now, speaking personally, I wasn't particularly interested in this campaign myself, and the reason I didn't get this book when it came out is because I've kind of avoided the 1940s stuff a little bit, but it's obviously something that is incredibly interesting to Rich Clark of the Too Fat Lardies, which has obviously prompted to write this. And it is actually quite a big open campaign, so there's quite a lot you can get out of this and out of this handbook as well, because you're fighting all the way through Belgium, the Netherlands and France as well. Although it's a relatively short campaign, I think it was only about 6 weeks or so in total, there was a lot going on, so you've got a lot of different units in there as well. And my interests lie more towards the east, more towards the Eastern Front and also the Far East as well, but those are very large topics to undertake, so I think with them doing the Blitzkrieg book, it's basically you've got a very small, condensed but interesting campaign all in one place here. So just to quickly give you a bit of an idea here off the back of this, we've got a little bit of information here. It says, but the handbook contains all you need to refight many of these actions, with chain of command included, are nearly 60 different army lists, along with 50 support lists covering the forces of France, Germany, Great Britain, Belgium, the Netherlands and Italy. The rules are also provided for a host of theatre-specific conditions, from 5th columnists and Brandenburg troops to river crossings, airborne and glider landings, and even civilians and Stuka attacks. And then it also says we have 5 totally brand new scenarios to bring life to the Blitzkrieg in the West, with desperate demolition missions, parachute landings, delaying actions and hasty defences attempting to stem the tide of the German advance. Now, if, like me, your interests are not particularly in the well, they are now, but they weren't before in the 1940 campaign, this book I think is still of interest to you, and I'll talk about that as we have a little look through it itself, because there are things like glider landings, as you said, using refugees on the table. There's also a few extra rules as well for the force morale, again, which I'm going to talk about as we go through it, as I show you some of the stuff in here. So I certainly think this is, if you are a chain of command player and you like chain of command a lot like I do, then I think this is probably well worth spending a bit of money on, just to get those extra rules, if nothing else. And also some of the stuff can port over quite easily to other theatres as well. But what we'll do is I shall have a look, we'll zoom in and we'll have a look at the book in close-up, and we'll talk about it, and I'll talk about some of the rules changes and some of the things that I actually like about this as well from that point on. Okay, so just to give you a quick look, this is the cover of the book, and there's the back as well. As I say, I pretty much read most of that information out there. There's not much more on there on the back to tell you than I've already told you here. So this is the book, again, another good looking product from Too Fat Lardies. I do like their design style. It fits in quite well with their ethos, I think. So let's just have a quick look inside of this, shall we? So we've got an introduction, of course, which just basically sums up everything, a nice long introduction. And then our contents page And I did forget to mention, I think there's 124 pages in total in this, so it's quite a long book as well. Yeah, 124 inside pages, obviously not including the covers there. But yeah, we've got 124 pages, so it's quite a long book in itself. We've got the introduction, and then we have an actual history of the campaign itself, which comes up to nearly 10 pages, 9 pages long, so that's pretty good. So even if you don't have any background knowledge in the campaign itself, there is, you know, you've got a potted history straight away, just to get you started, if nothing else. Then we've got some rules additions, which I think a lot of people might be interested in. It says, to capture the feel of the 1940 campaign, however, we will some of this stuff can easily port over to other Chain of Command theatres and games, and we'll talk about that when I get to that point. Then we've got the army lists themselves, and as you can see, it stretches from page 25 all the way up to page 120, so almost 100 pages of army lists. And we've got Belgians, Dutch, the French, the British, the Germans and the Italians as well, because the Italians got involved ever so slightly down in the south of France. But again, a lot of these things, in particular the Germans and also probably the British as well, could quite easily be used in other theatres. So for Norway, for example, that kind of thing, around the same time, with probably a few little tweaks here and there, just really probably on support rather than anything else. But anyway, let's have a quick look. So we've got our as always, lovely photos in the Too Fat Lardies stuff of various games in progress. These are all period specific as well. You know, not too many big photos, so they're not just using up space in the book. They are, you know, they're there to illustrate things very nicely. And here we have a very good background, good maps, great mapping as always, just to show you the actions. And again, as I say, more maps, more information here. I've still not actually sat down and read all of this yet, so I will get to it. But I do know that Rich Clark and both Nick Skinner both are very much interested in the history behind their wargaming. So, you know, and they read the up-to-date scholarly work. So you know, I know that this is going to be a good condensation of some good history. Then we'll come on to the rules editions. This is probably the thing that a lot of people are probably most interested in here. What we have here is a force morale changeover. Now, in the original Chain of Command, the force morale for most units is pretty simple. You roll 5 dice if you have a force morale of 5+, and then they drop as they come down. As your force morale drops, your command dice fall away as well. However, now this has changed, and we actually have variable force morale tracks. And again, this is something that would be really easy just to port over to other theatres, even later war stuff. Quite easily, you just work it out, because you know some of the regulars are going to have more better chances of holding on to their dice, their command dice. You can see how they drop down here. So let's have a look. So, you know, you could just basically tailor this to your own needs for each particular campaign or game you're playing. So let me just show you here. We've got, if you have a force morale of 6+, these are rolling 4 dice. If it goes to 5, they drops to 3. 4 doesn't change. Then if your force morale drops to 3, you drop down to 2 command points. I think that one's for a green one. This is a green Belgium infantry reserve, so they're all slightly different as well, which is quite nice. What has also changed here as well is we have this thing here, which is the J, which is a jump off points, and this is a new addition to the old use of the jump off points. Once you drop down to your force morale down to a 2 on the old rules, on the original rules should I say, your opponent gets to remove one of your jump off points, which in a club game or a setup game isn't particularly a bad thing, because if you are down to 2 force morale, you're probably near the end of the game anyway. In a campaign game, it's slightly different because you're using jump off points to get off the table and to try to keep some of your soldiers alive. So it can be a bit of an embuggration. However, it's one of those things. A lot of people are not playing campaign games, so it works in one sense, but in any other sense for a club game, at that point, if you're down on 2 force morale, the game is pretty much over anyway, so the loss of a jump off point isn't going to hurt you that much. However, now they have to actually fall back with one section or a team and make contact with a friendly jump off point. And it happens immediately, as it says here. So basically what this is doing is forcing you to retire at least one unit. So I think this is a much better way of doing it than just taking a jumping off point off. Because taking off a jumping off point in a 1-up game doesn't really affect you at that point. However, forcing you to move a unit back will affect you because they are then falling back. So it's basically making you automatically withdraw, and I really like that. I think that's a great little rule amendment. What we also have as well is this thing called the red dice, and this comes into some of these lists, but again you could quite easily add this to any elite force that you've got in any other game, as long as you make a note of it. It's a support option. You can actually add it in and it becomes another dice to add. You basically ignore 5s and 6s, but you use a 1 to a 4 so that you can add on extra to your already existing dice. And again, this is removed when your force morale drops to a certain point, as indicated by the red point in the force morale. So again, a really nice subtle but great addition to the game, which is really going to make it make the elite forces stand out, especially if they take this as a support option. Also, extra rules, we have Unreliable Allies. This is something that you could quite easily, again, put this into any kind of any other theatre of war. You don't have to be 1940. For example, I mean, you could even have like Romanians fighting alongside the Germans on the Eastern Front, or the Italians fighting alongside the Germans. Anywhere where there are allies on both sides, Norwegians and British in Norway, just to have these in as well. Again, it's another support option that you can put in. There's a slight change here on smoke grenades. We've also got the inferior senior leader as well. This is somebody who's slightly different and is not as good as the normal leader, but he's basically just another addition, just to make things a little slightly different. Bicycle mounted troops. We also have horse-mounted troops as well, because that's something that's not really covered in the main rules, but again, this is worthwhile having. Motorcycle troops and assault boats and rafts. Although all of these were definitely used in the 1940 campaign, they were also used in every other campaign as well afterwards, pretty much. So, you're talking everything really, definitely early war, up to the 1940s stuff. So, a lot of the 1945, 44, 45 stuff. So a lot of this is very easy just to add to your existing games. Fixed telephone wires. It's something that is very useful in 1940, less so as the war goes on, with radios becoming more commonplace. But again, the Soviets early war in particular will be using fixed telephone wires and things. So it's just another little addition here. As I say, just to get these extra rules, I think this is worth it. We also have as well airborne operations. Now, the last airborne operation rules that I read were the old Don Featherstone ones, where he would get pieces of paper, throw them in the air, and wherever they landed on the table, that's where the troops started. They tidied this one up a little bit, and basically you roll for which sector on the field that your gliders or your troops will come down. And there's some nice rules here as well for if the gliders land in the same spot. Gliders in particular will be replacing jumping off points. So that's really nice, because then they become quite what's the word? You don't know where they're going to land if you're getting glider attacks, both as the enemy or the attacker. and they then replace the jumping off point, which again is a really nice way of doing it. Obviously this is for some of the attacks on the Belgian forts, but you could quite easily use these rules and just stick them in Arnhem in 1944 quite easily, or any other glider landing actions that took place in the Second World War. So again, extra rules. Then we also have some armour rules additions with just some other extra bits and pieces here. So we've got unreliable vehicles, small turrets, lacking radios. This stuff, once again, you know, this covers all of the war really. It doesn't just have to be the Blitzkrieg period. It can be much later into the war where some of this stuff is still happening. Also, combat engineering as well is another part of it. Although, you know, it's very much about the forts in France and in Belgium and the attacks on those. There were forts in the east as well and all over Europe. So this kind of stuff really, you know, fits in anywhere and everywhere. So as I said, that's the extra rules, and that runs to quite a few pages. We've got page 13 to 24, so you've got 11 pages of extra rules. And then we've gone to the sport lists, or should I say the army lists. Starting with the Belgians, so these are all just in alphabetical order. We've got various bits and pieces here, like the infantry platoon with all their support lists. So this is very similar to chain of command. If you're used to that, you know how these work. You basically have a number of support options, and you just choose from these lists as to which ones you want. So we have quite a few. So we've got the reserve infantry platoon here, infantry scout platoon, chasseurs adnais platoon, whatever they are, cyclists, and you can see here a couple of these have got the red dice option. So this comes in on the list 2, so this would cost you 2 points to add a red dice to your chasseurs adnais, for example, and then that disappears, as you can see here, when their force morale drops to 4. But very typical to set out with all the rest of the chain of command force options and things. We've got cavalry motorcycle platoons, and then we have national characteristics as well, and training for the various armies, of course, and a little bit more definition on the support options for the specific armies. Then we also have the master arsenals for each of these armies as well, which again is for each individual army. This is a great thing. I'm just going to flick through a little bit because these are similar-ish, but you know, obviously different kinds of troops are in here. But I want to flick through a little bit just to the British ones, for example. Let's jump past the French here. So they're the French. There's quite a lot of French, as you can see, pages and pages of French stuff, because there were quite a lot of different types in this particular period, if nothing else. You even got colonial troop characteristics as well to be included in the French. So this is something that you could quite easily just chuck this into some of the North African fighting as well, with the Americans against the Americans, just to make something a bit more interesting and different. Use these as a basis for other campaigns and other periods and theatres to fight in. As you can see, we've got tons and tons of French stuff here. Then they have the national characteristics. So this is stuff like grenade launchers, and what's this one, the Le Bateau Conduite. So they have a couple of things that you can add in, and a big old French master arsenal there. And let me just jump through here. I want to talk about the British one in particular here. There's a British one. So we have a good introduction to the British stuff here, and as I say, we've got regulation platoons in. So we've got 1939 regulation platoon, we've also got 1940 regulation platoon as well, so slight differences between those. And then motor infantry, LOC, line of communication, armour support, searchlight troops. And the reason I'm talking in particular about the British is because, again, I've mentioned it, but these could quite easily be used in Norway. It doesn't have to be the France fighting. You could quite easily take any of these, like the 1940 platoon back here, regulation platoon. And even with this, you've got the territorials, the regulars and the guards. Even within this, you could then just port those straight over to a Norwegian campaign or a Norwegian game quite easily, so like Narvik and wherever else they were fighting. You could possibly, at a push as well, take these and use these as 8th Army. Again, you'd probably need to mess around a little bit with the infantry with the support lists a little bit. But if with a bit of tweaking, most of this stuff you would end up finding in the desert, for example. And also, you know, again, at a push, this stuff could go all the way out to the Far East. So one of my favourite theatres is Malaya, so some of this stuff could quite easily fit over in Malaya as well. Again, with just a couple of tweaks with some of the vehicles that they did or didn't have out there. So this is what I'm saying about the, in particular, the British, and I would say also the German one as well. So here we have the German one. We have, again, a couple of different, lots of different lists here. So we're starting with the first wave divisions, second wave divisions, and we also have the third wave divisions as well. So they're getting worse, all the way up to 5th division. We've got cavalry divisions as well, static divisions, 7th wave divisions, pioneer platoons, motorised infantry as well. What else? We've got motorcycle reconnaissance platoons, the panzers as well. So we've got panzer divisions, so you can have some of these motorised infantry units attached to the panzer divisions. We've also got the SS as well. So we've got Totenskopf and Verfügungsleibstandarte as well. So, you know, these are the earlier ones, so these are probably not what, you know, most wargamers think of as the elite forces later on in the war, but you know, you've got a basic SS unit there if that's what the kind of thing you're into, including their motorcycle platoons as well. And then we've got the Fallschirmjäger as well, so we've got airborne troops, and as I say, some of these could quite easily port over to other periods. You could even go as far as doing, you know, Operation Sea Lion stuff as well with paratroopers versus the British, as I've mentioned, and even the French as well, because they were obviously kicking about in Britain after the retreat at Dunkirk. And we've even got the Gebirgsjäger platoons, the mountain troops as well. So a huge choice of different types of Germans in particular. Now, this is the interesting thing here. We've got the German national characteristics, which are the same basically as the ones in the basic book. But we've also got these support options. Now, this is the good thing, the fun thing. We've got the shabby Nazi tricks. So we have, we can put in 5th columnists who will disrupt the opponent, which is quite nice as well. Basically, it stops them activating or deploying onto the table. Then we also have the shabby trick number 2, which is using civilians and using refugees as human shields almost. But basically, they come on the table and they mess things up a little bit. And then we have shabby trick number 3, which is the nuns with guns. And you know, although whether German parachutists actually dressed up as nuns or not it doesn't really matter, but it's the fact that it was the terror that they caused, or at least the rumours that were going around that there were German soldiers dressed as nuns, and that's what this is trying to replicate here. So you can use a civilian base like a refugee, but then it can be quickly turned into an LMG team as well from the German squads. So lots of fun to be had with that, if nothing else at least. And then we also have, we've got another Jean-Claude as well, which is another treacherous anti-French, anti-British personality who he works like a sniper by the looks of things. Then the other thing as well is we have the Stuka. This is a completely new set of rules as well to add. It's almost like a pre-game bombardment, but it really does smash up the tables and things. The buildings that are on the table, but also may potentially put down an unexploded bomb as well. And they are quite dangerous because anybody caught under a Stuka bombardment enters a table automatically with shock on them, so it's pretty nasty for them, unfortunately. And then we also have just a bit of a roundup here of the feeling the German armour as well. And we've got German Master Arsenal table again. This is nice because this is just adding to your already existing armour tables that you have in Chain of Command itself as well. And then finally, the Italians. This is quite a small selection of Italian stuff, but that's because they only had a small impact in the 1940 campaign. But again, it's still interesting to have these in here. So we've got the Fusiliers companies. You've also got the black shirts here and the Alpini as well, with some national characteristics. So again, it's something that you can work off, you know, just to create a another force for even another area around the same time quite easily. And obviously, they're similar to everything else. We've got the Master Arsenal. Now we also have, as I say, extra scenarios as well. So this adds to the 6 scenarios that we already have in the Chain of Command book itself. So quite a few of these ones. So this is a unit which are withdrawing, going with a bang whilst demolishing things. So this is adding in tasks similar to sharp practice. So a task has will have a level of it, which how long it takes, and then if your pioneers are doing something, they roll a dice, and that's how many they take off the level, and that's how long it takes to do whatever it is they're supposed to be doing. So it's a bit of a timer, but a variable timer. Then we have a strike from above with the German airborne troops dropping in from parachutes and the rules for that. Swift to support. This is a scenario based around a weak defender attempting to hold off an attacker until support can arrive. Then we have a hasty defence, which pretty much speaks for itself. And then finally, Blitzkrieg. It's a strong attacker attempting to overwhelm their opponents as rapidly as possible. So, again, some very interesting, different scenarios just in the book compared to the ones that are in the original Chain of Command. These are very nice additions to that, and I think, like I say, I'm very impressed by this. I wish I'd bought it sooner, is basically what I'm trying to say. There's one or two little things in it, a couple of typos here and there. For example, in the Airborne landing, let me just bring that up. It talks about here that once you have moved your combat patrols, I think it says, I can't remember what it said, but there's a bit of confusion that I found straight away. So basically, you move it says that you move all your combat patrols, and once your combat patrols are moved, you then do the deployment term. But then it talks about replacing the German gliders, replacing the jump off points. So I think there's just a slight bit of confusion here. So it says here, yes, if neither a D6 are rolled, the glider corresponds to an area controlling a patrol marker. It talks about patrol markers in one point and jumping off points in another point. So, but given by the examples, I think it's just a typo, and it means that it's a jumping off point, not a patrol marker. So there's a couple of little things like that, but you know, these things happen in books anyway, so it's nothing too worrying. And there's always somebody on the Chain of Command Facebook group who will quickly answer any question that you have about these kind of things anyway. So personally, I'm very impressed with it. It's a good price. Like I say, you can get it for PDF. You can get it in hardcover, as I have, because I don't like reading PDFs. And it's just a nice read as well, just to read the background history and also just to have a look at some of the various forces. It bodes well for future releases for Chain of Command in this style, and I know that Nick has been working on the Arnhem book for a long time, so we're looking forward to that one. And I know that Rich has also been working on the Far East book as well, so I think these are both going to follow a similar pattern to this. So I think this one, while you're waiting for those ones, if you don't have this, I would absolutely 100% say yes, buy this, just because of the flexibility of the forces that are involved in it. if not just this campaign, and also those extra rules as well for Chain of Command, just to make your games a little bit better. Alright, so I shall wrap up this review there. So thank you very much for watching if you've got this far. If you have, please do consider supporting the channel, either with a supporting membership on the channel or Patreon, both of which will get you perks, early access to ad-free videos, and also other bits and pieces. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. Every bit helps, it's all good. And I will see you in the next Storm of Steel video.